I'm back with Powerless. I'm going to read chapter 6 right now. Chapter 6 is called Flight. Eric was right. When Daniel forced himself to relax and let go of his fear, it was the single greatest experience of his life. He was flying. Well, technically, Eric was the one doing the flying. Daniel was just along for the ride. But what a ride it was! They stayed fairly low, only 20 or 30 feet above the treetops. Eric said if they went much higher, it would get too cold for Daniel. But down here, Daniel could relish the feeling of the warm air blowing in his hair. And every now and then, Eric would find an air current to ride and dive sharply through the mist, only to rise slowly again into the night. As they glided through the dark, Daniel allowed himself a little pretending, and he imagined that he was alone, that he was the boy who could fly, that he was just as special as the rest of them. "Never thought you'd see Noble's Green like this, huh, Daniel?" asked Eric, startling him from his daydream. "I know it seems like a boring little town, but once you've seen it from way up here, well, I wouldn't live anywhere else." Daniel had to agree. At night, from above, it looked like a sea of twinkling stars surrounded by the dark forest of Mount Noble. The mountain had always seemed a little frightening to Daniel, constantly looming over their heads, but the lights of Noble's Green glowed warmingly in the dark. They looked like home. "Here," said Eric, "we're over Briarwood now. Let's take a little detour and I'll show you where I live." Though he'd never been there, Daniel knew that Briarwood was a working-class neighborhood, and it was a bit rougher than the other parts of town. Though he didn't know why, he was surprised to find out that Eric lived there. He had always assumed that Eric lived on a street like Elm Lane. Eric flew lower, and soon the little lights became street lamps and bedroom windows. The houses in Briarwood were smaller than those on Elm, but clean. The residents obviously took care of their neighborhood. "That's my street over there," said Eric, pointing, "and my house is the third one down, and that's my mom's station wagon in the drive." Eric stopped mid-sentence. They were no longer flying, they were hovering now, suspended in midair. Eric's eyes were on a blue four-door Chevy parked next to the beaten-up old station wagon. Is something wrong?" asked Daniel. It was a bit unnerving to be floating that far up without moving. It was less flying and a lot more like hanging on. "Huh?" said Eric. "Oh, yeah, I'm fine. It's just, well, that car wasn't there when I left. It's Bob's." Is he your stepdad or something?" "No," answered Eric with such conviction that Daniel had to tighten his grip. "He's just my mom's boyfriend. Well, her latest, or at least he was. He left last week, and I was hoping he was gone for good." Daniel didn't say anything. He didn't think there was anything else to say. "Aw, the heck with him," Eric said finally. "Come on, let's get home." They flew in silence for the next few minutes. Finally, Eric's scowl broke as he spotted something near the edge of town. "Well, look at that," he explained. "You mind if we make a quick stop? There's something I should probably take care of." Daniel tried to make out what Eric was looking at, but it was no use. Whatever Eric was seeing, it was too far away for Daniel's eyes. Sure, what's up?" "Just some unfinished business," Eric smiled as he began their descent. When they got closer, Daniel could make out stacks of hollowed-out cars and rusty metaled appliances, refrigerators, washers, ovens, and the like. They were landing in the middle of an old junkyard near the edge of the forest. Piles of rusted metal and torn-up furniture littered the area. To their right was a 12-foot-high chain-link fence, hanging limp around a gaping hole. It looked as if a Mack truck had plowed a hole clean through it. From somewhere close by came the crash of smashing, squeaking metal, the sound of destruction. Daniel was pondering what business Eric could possibly have in a place like this when a sudden breeze brought him the answer. The already unpleasant stink of the junkyard was now mixed with the familiar stench of trouble. "Let me guess. Clay and Bud?" asked Daniel, waving at the foul air in front of his face. "Yep, this place is their favorite hangout. We've got the tree house. They've got their junkyard. Kind of fits, don't you think? Eric must have noticed the look on Daniel's face because he smiled and winked. Just stay close to me and you'll be fine. But Daniel began searching for the right words. Are you sure? I mean, there are 2 of them. Trust me, Daniel. Clay's the only real danger. Bud's just a sidekick. I know how to handle this. Though Eric landed lightly, it took Daniel a moment to get his land legs again. As Eric strode confidently toward the sounds of mayhem, Daniel struggled to keep up. What else could he do? He couldn't exactly fly away, and since he had no idea where this place was in relation to his house, walking home was also out of the question. They found Clay standing on the hood of a rusted-out truck, clubbing the windshield with a bent fender. Bud stood some distance away, throwing bricks at the headlights. As it turned out, Bud was a pretty bad shot, and one brick went high, slamming into the back of Clay's skull. Watch it, snarled Clay. The brick had split in 2, but despite his growling, Clay had hardly flinched. Oh, that little brick didn't hurt you, said Bud. You want me to throw it back at you? See how you like it? All right, I'm sorry. The 2 bickered some more before returning to their random demolition. As he watched the senseless destruction, Daniel thought what a waste it was for these 2 troublemakers like Clay and Bud to have powers. And here was Daniel, as unremarkable as bread. Eric stood by and watched the pair for a minute or 2 before stepping out of the shadows into the moonlight. By now, Daniel's eyes had adjusted to the dark, but he still didn't like the idea of being left behind in this creepy place, so he pinched his nose and followed Eric into the open. Uh-oh, said Bud, seeing Eric's approach. Clay, man, you better look out. Clay looked up from his work and glared when he saw Eric walking toward him. Daniel's feeling of uneasy was only made worse when Clay jumped off the beaten-up car to meet Eric head-on. Daniel's gut tightened when he noticed that Clay didn't drop the fender. Well, looks like the new kid's making more friends every day. The Buddha and the girlie weren't enough, huh? Clay, it's time we had a talk, said Eric. That's so. Isn't it a little late for you to be out on a school night, Boy Scout? Bud was laughing along with Clay's taunts, but Daniel suspected it was only to cover his fear. The air had taken on a more pungent tang. I'm serious, Clay, said Eric, unsmiling. What you did to Daniel here was way over the line. He could have died. Hey, it's not my fault that Yellow Belly over there went jumping off that building. All I was going to do was talk to him, and he went all crazy. Talk? You're not much of a talker, Clay. Oh, yeah? And who are you to say anything about it, anyway? I'm not a part of your little clique, your group of supers or whatever. You can't tell me what to do. You know the rules, Clay, and even if you have to follow them, consider this your last warning. Leave Daniel, and everyone else for that matter, alone. Stick to beating up this junk. It's what you're good at. Eric turned around and started to walk away, which Daniel saw immediately was a giant mistake. As soon as his back was turned, Clay swung that fender hard with both hands. Daniel managed to shout a warning, but it wasn't necessary. Eric spun around just in time and stopped the fender inches from his face. Both boys were now holding on to opposite sides of the metal club, and Daniel could see the strain on their faces, and each tried to wrestle it away from the other. The sound of twisting metal ground against his eardrums as Daniel watched the 2 boys tear the fender apart under their very fingers. It was amazing and frightening all at the same time. They were so strong, and that steel was bending, ripping in their grasp. The struggle seemed evenly matched, and Daniel began to worry that Eric had overestimated his advantage. If Clay was just as strong, how could Eric be sure that he could win? And what if Bud got his courage up and decided to step in on Clay's side? Daniel was quick-witted, but he was pretty sure that a battle of wits was not what Bud had in mind. Just then, the fender broke and the 2 boys fell, each holding a twisted, ruined piece in his hand. Clay regained his footing first and rushed headlong toward Eric. Eric got to his feet and braced himself for the impact, which was massive. Daniel's ears rang as Clay nearly knocked Eric off his feet. The boys were wrestling now in a struggle to gain leverage over the other. Then in a furious display of strength, Clay finally managed to get the upper hand, literally lifting Eric off the ground and throwing him across the yard. Eric landed in a heap at Daniel's feet. He was battered and bruised and his clothes were muddy and torn. But despite it all, he managed to stand up. "Had enough, Clay?" he asked, spitting out a bit of blood and smiling. Like a bull seeing red, Clay bellowed with rage and charged. But this time, Eric did things differently. When Clay got close, Eric sidestepped and grabbed him with both hands and flew up straight, carrying him high into the night sky, with Clay shouting and cursing all the way. Just like that, they were gone, and Daniel was left alone in the junkyard with Bud and his cloud of stink. Bud's laughter had stopped, and the fat bully seemed just as uncertain as Daniel about what to do next. The stink cloud was getting worse, though nearly obscuring Bud from view as little strands of bad-smelling fog began to reach toward Daniel, almost as if she was seeking him out. "Your power is a cloud of super stink? Oh, come on," said Daniel, pulling his shirt collar up over his nose and his mouth. He heard it before he saw anything, a distant sound like someone whistling far away. As it got louder, Daniel looked up and saw a shape hurtling toward the ground. Clay was falling out of the sky. Daniel cringed to think what would happen when he hit the earth, and had barely a moment to wonder what had become of Eric when he saw him swoop in and grab Clay just seconds before impact. They circled the junkyard with Clay clinging to Eric for life. "Okay, here we go again," said Eric, and he started rising again up into the dark. No, I give," shouted a terrified Clay. "I give." Eric changed directions and gently settled back onto the ground. Clay had turned white, and his wind-blown hair was sticking up on top of his head. Daniel thought he saw a dead moth or two stuck among his curls. The kid looked ready to kiss the ground. "So?" asked Eric. I'm sorry, Daniel. It won't happen again," said Clay through clenched teeth. Of all the apologies Daniel had heard in his life, this one sounded the weakest. But it was enough for him. "Bud, you're getting a pass this time, but the same goes for you," said Eric. "Leave Daniel alone." There was no answer from the stink cloud, but Daniel knew he had heard. Bud was like an ostrich with his head in the sand, just hoping for the two of them to go away. "Come on, Daniel, it's late." Daniel grabbed hold of Eric's back, and up they flew, leaving the two bullies to their shame. After they were out of earshot, Daniel said, "Thanks for that." "No problem. Clay's strong. He's incredibly tough, but he's not a flyer." "Probably for the best, since he's scared of heights." Eric winked. "Can't imagine why." Then came that laugh, Eric's contagious laugh. But this time, Daniel didn't share the smile. Clay was a bully. It was true, and he might even be truly dangerous. But nevertheless, Daniel couldn't shake the image of Clay's generally terrified face as he fell. Daniel wondered, just how powerful was Eric? Did he even know? Was there any limit to the things he could do? And what did that mean for so much power to be in the hands of a 12-year-old boy? That's the end of chapter 6.